Hello everyone, welcome to another interesting session of the Analyst. In today's video, we are going to discuss 5 important topics from the perspective of the UPSC examination. The topics are as follows. First of all, we will inquire about the provisions of Forest Conservation Act 2023 and the associated judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court. Then we will study about the regulation of FINTECH apps and the issues associated with them, which will be followed by a quick overlook about the status of growing of the rubber crop in India. Then we will study about an artificial intelligence innovation which is transforming the health sector named as AlPHAFOLD. At the end, we will read about the BOSE-EINSTEIN condensate as the year 2024 marks the completion of 100 years of the discovery by Satyendranath Bose. The handout of the discussion will be available in the description of the video for your revision. So let's begin. The Forest Conservation Act 2023 has made to the headlines because of a recent judgment of the Supreme Court, where Supreme Court held that the forest or the definition of forest will continue to have a broad encompassing meaning against the provisions of Forest Conservation Act of 2023. Now this forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the theme of environment and its conservation. So, the Forest Conservation Act of 2023 was enacted to amend the provisions of Forest Conservation Act of 1980 for provision of better conservation as well as participation of local communities in the conservation of forest. So let's see the provisions of the Forest Conservation Act of 2023. Under the definition of forest, the Forest Conservation Act of 2023 includes any recorded forest land which is recorded under Forest Conservation Act of 1927 or under any law by the state government. Also, any private forest land or plantations, etc. As well as it provides several exemptions, such as for strategic projects related to national security within the 100 kilometers of international borders. So, if there is any project which is being developed within the 100 kilometers of the international boundary, such as line of control or line of actual control, then such development projects will be exempted from the provision of Forest Conservation Act of 2023. Now, why there was requirement of such exemption? Let's see that if there is China and China is developing certain projects along the line of actual control, to counter which the Indian government also started developing various kind of infrastructure in the regions around line of actual control in the states of Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh. Now vast tracts of states such as Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh falls under the definition of forest. Thus, if you want to do any kind of development activity in this particular region, then you require a lot of approval by various government agencies, thus delaying such development project. Thus, such exemptions were provided to faster deployment of various infrastructure projects around the border area to ensure the national security. At the same time, it also included new forestry activities such as ecotourism, zoo and safari into the array of forestry activity which will be owned by the government and will be set up outside the protected areas. Now these activities of ecotourism or zoo will be owned by the government but will be eventually administered by the local communities. The rationale behind this provision was that this will lead to further livelihood opportunities for such local communities, thus increasing their financial security. At the same time, it leads to the diversion of forest land for non-forestry purposes. Now keep this in mind that under the Forest Conservation Act of 1980, such diversion for non-forest purpose only included the cultivation of commercial and horticulture crops. Commercial such as tea and coffee, and horticulture such as tomato, onion and potato. But now there are several other exemptions which has been provided, for which a forest land can be diverted to a non-forest purpose. Such purposes can be any commercial or infrastructure projects, or assignment of forest land to any private person through the medium of lease of the land. At the same time, the central government is going to create a Regional Empowered Committee, REC, which is going to review any development project which requires the clearance of the forest land. Now, such review and approval for any such project has to be done within the period of 2 months. At the same time, the state governments are going to create a Project Steering Committee or PSC, which will screen any project which will be provided by the State Forest Department. Also, here lies a leukemia, that if there is any project which requires to clear the land of less than 5 hectares, then no such screening is required. Also, the Act provided for accredited compensatory afforestation or ACA, under which the people can raise vegetation on their land and then provide it to the companies for monetary compensation. So let's take an example here to develop further understanding. Let's say that I am going to raise 1 hectare of forest on my private land. Now, under the provisions of FCA 2023, I can sell this land to any company which can be either public or private, and I will get compensated for it. Also keep this in mind that such compensation can take place across the country. It means that let's say I am the farmer in the region of Tamil Nadu and I have grown 1 hectare of forest. Now there is some development activity which is taking place in the state of Uttarakhand by a company named U in the state of Uttarakhand. Now this company can purchase the land or 1 hectare of forest which was grown by a farmer, that is me, in the state of Tamil Nadu, and it can show to the government that see, I cleared this 1 hectare of land in Uttarakhand. To compensate that, I have purchased 1 hectare of forest land in the region of Tamil Nadu. Thus, such accredited compensatory afforestation can take place across the country and not only in the region where such deforestation is taking place. At the same time, the state government is going to create land banks for management of such accredited compensatory afforestation. Now, along with these provisions, there were several environmental concerns which were raised by various groups, thus leading to several issues with the Act. The first and foremost being that the Act violated the provisions of Forest Right Act 2006. Now, the Forest Right Act 2006 provides for prior informed consent or PIC by Gram Sabha for any development project which is taking place in their traditional dwelling land. But the Forest Conservation Act 2023 removed the requirement of any such approval by Gram Sabha for both stage 1 and stage 2 clearance for any kind of development project. At the same time, there were also issues with accredited compensatory afforestation. So, as we have seen that such compensatory afforestation can take place across the region, across the country. Thus, let's say that in UK, there is rampant development projects which are taking place. Now, UK also shares border with the region of Nepal. Thus, if the project is taking place within the 100 kilometer, within the boundary of international border, then it is obvious that it will not fall under the mechanism of FCA 2023. Thus, no clearance will be required. So, rampant development activities can take place, which will ultimately lead to a lot of deforestation in the region of Uttarakhand. At the same time, what this company is doing, that it is purchasing the forested land in the region of Tamil Nadu. So, it is obvious that the tree cover in the region of Uttarakhand will decline sharply. At the same time, the tree cover will increase in Tamil Nadu. This will obviously leads to a lot of ecological imbalance, where one region will be deprived of tree cover and thus various externalities can take place in the state of Uttarakhand. At the same time, the environmentalists have also contended that these new stock, this new afforested forest cannot compensate for the carbon stock which was held by the old forest. Also, the various kind of ecosystem services which the old forest was providing, that can obviously not be regenerated within a short span by this new afforested region. Also, the provisions of FCA contradicted the Godvarman judgment of 1996, in which the Supreme Court held that the forest will include the dictionary meaning of forest, which means all type of forest without any nature, classification or any ownership of land. If there is a tree cover of more than 1 hectare, it will fall under the definition of forest and thus shall be protected by the government. But under FCA 2023, only declared forest and the land recorded as forest in the government record after the year of 1980 was included. As we can see that it covered the land declared forest under the Indian Forest Act of 1927 or those lands which were not recorded under the law but notified as forest in the government record as on 25th of October 1980. Thus, with this definition, it excluded a vast area of forest land from the ambit of protection, up to the region of 1.97 lakh kilometer square. Also, various environmentalists raised the issue that the northeast states will face a lot of deforestation because they fall on the international border. All these contentions were rejected by the government, which stated that first of all there are unclear government records prior to 25th of October 1980. At the same time, there is need to provide connectivity to roadside amenities, habitation and railway lines. Also, it said that the accredited compensatory afforestation ACA, which has been introduced by this act, will lead to the plantation of on the non-forest land by the private people. But the Supreme Court took the cognizance of this issue as various petitions were filed against the act and thus passed a landmark judgment recently where it stated that the central government shall revert to the dictionary meaning of forest as it was upheld in the T.N. Godvarman case of 1996. Thus, the central government shall protect the forest irrespective of their nature, classification as well as their ownership. Also, such definition of forest will not be confined to the forest only under the government land records. Further, the Supreme Court held that if there is any fresh proposal for opening a zoo or starting a safari on the forest land, then you require the prior approval of the Supreme Court. Now, this forms another interesting case of judicial activism following the electoral bond case, where the Supreme Court has checked and tried to correct the provisions laid down by the central government. With these suggestions, we move forward to our next news of the day, where in its recent report, the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Communication and IT has expressed the concern over foreign-owned fintech apps in India, thus raising an important issue of regulation of fintech apps in our country. This forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the theme of Indian economy and associated issues. So let's try to first understand what is fintech. Well, fintech stands for financial technology, where certain banking facilities are provided to the consumer through the use of technology such as application platforms, in opposition to the brick and mortar based traditional banking system. Now, with the recent development of digital public infrastructure in our country, India has become a trailblazer when it comes to fintech revolution, which can also be seen from the status of fintech in India, which is growing rapidly. For example, the fintech adoption rate in our country stands at 87% against the global average of 64%. Also, India has the third highest fintech apps in the world, which is more than 9,000 apps, which comprises of more than 14% funding for our startup sector. The reason being that these fintech apps provide various kind of financial services, as can be seen from the infographic. For example, they provide digital banking, where you can put your money in these digital apps. Also, it provides for digital lending mechanisms such as loans, credits, etc. Also, you can do digital investment through these apps by stock trading, mutual funds. For example, there is an app such as Zerodha. Also, it provides for consumer finance and the most known by us all, the digital payments which we do using these fintech apps such as Paytm, PhonePe, etc. Because of which, as per National Payment Corporation of India, between October 2022 to November 2023, these fintech apps comprised of the total 70% of the digital payment transactions which took place in our country. At the same time, these apps has led to financial inclusion, because as per the Global Fintech Survey released by the World Bank, now more than 80% of our population has bank accounts in comparison to 54% in the year of 2014. Also, there is increasing cross-country adoption of such fintech-based payments. For example, very recently the UPI has been launched in United Arab Emirates, which coincided with the visit of our Prime Minister to United Arab Emirates. At the same time, the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Communication and IT has raised the concern that fintech sector in our country is being dominated by the foreign owned apps, which is visible from the table here. For example, the PhonePe, which is backed by Walmart, and Google Pay has the market share of 47 and 36% respectively. And in comparison to them, the Bhim UPI, which is monitored by National Payment Corporation of India, which is an Indian-led app, it has market share of meager 0.22%. At the same time, the total number of digital transactions which took place in last year, it was a staggering number of more than 5,600 million transactions took place on PhonePe app, while the Bhim UPI registered only 24 million transactions in comparison. Now, such foreign domination of fintech sector can lead to several issues in our country. For example, it can lead to the issue of money laundering, right? Where a lot of illicit funds are channeled into our country using such fintech based apps. For example, there is an Abu Dhabi based PayPal app which is being administered by the Chinese investment scamsters. Now, the enforcement agencies in our country find it really difficult to place the track of these illicit funds which happens through these apps. At the same time, in recent time, this has become a rising concern because these companies, they do not follow the KYC norms or know your customer norms which has been laid down by the RBI. This was also the case with Paytm. Also, there are a lot of cyber attacks which can take place because these apps uses the digital infrastructure which is prone to several such attacks. For example, more than 13 lakh cases of digital fraud was reported in the year of 2022 itself. Also, there is an issue of digital divide where the total number of digital transactions which happened in our country, the rural area comprised only of 30% of those transactions. At the same time, such digital transaction is taking place among 45% of population in Bangladesh and 70% in Kenya. Now, there are several reasons for this persisting digital divide which exists in our country, which ultimately hampers the idea of financial inclusion. First and foremost is obviously your lack of infrastructure. For example, even today in our country, there are a lot of zero villages or the villages where there is poor internet connectivity. The second reason can be your persisting gender divide within the framework of this digital divide. Because, for example, as per a report by the Center of Monitoring Indian Economy, only 31% of Indian women have access to smartphones in comparison to 64% male who have access to smartphones. Also, this digital divide exists because of digital illiteracy. Now, to understand this, let's take an example of a person who resides in the village of Karnataka. Let's say that this person moves to the metropolitan city of Bangalore and becomes a rickshaw driver. So he wants to get access to these fintech apps to do digital transaction because he is observing that everyone around him is doing transactions digitally. But he will not have that access, the reason being that first of all, he does not understand the language of majority of this platform, which is majorly in English. At the same time, he is unaware about the technical know-how of how to use these digital apps. Thus, all this comprises of the issue of digital divide. At the same time, there are several regulatory issues because there is no single umbrella-like organization which regulate various types and kinds of fintech apps. As we can see that the regulatory mechanism for such fintech apps in India is very diverse, leading to no single identity or no comprehensive legislative framework. For example, the regulatory mechanisms which exist in our country are such as Payment and Settlement System Act of 2007, which was devised by RBI and Indian Bank Association. Then there is Peer-to-Peer Lending Guidelines of 2017. Also, the National Payment Corporation of India, which is a not-for-profit company registered under the Companies Act of 1956. It regulates the payment which take place through the channel of UPI or Unified Payment Interface. For example, in the November 2020, NPCI launched a rule which stated that from now onwards there will be a 30% volume cap on the transaction which take place through UPI. But this has been repeatedly extended up to 31st of December 2024. Also, there are other regulatory mechanisms such as the non-banking financial companies are regulated under RBI Act of 1934, whereas the payment banks are regulated under the Regulation Act of 1949. Thus, as we have seen, there are various agencies which regulate various kind of fintech apps, and there is absence of any comprehensive legislative framework. Also, there is issue of data privacy and its violation. For example, these apps, they collect a lot of data about you and me, such as our address, our bank account details, or how much money we do have in our account, or which are the products which we are buying through the transaction details. All this data which is being collected by these fintech apps can be sent to any other app for the targeted, algorithm based targeting of your consumer pattern or your consumer behavior, right? This forms the violation of your right to privacy or your right to informed choice, which is a fundamental right under the Article 21 as held in the K.S. Puttaswamy case. Also, there is an issue of market distortion by these foreign-owned apps. How they can do that? They can penetrate to the large market of India because they have access to various consumer-based products which is also linked to the apps which are being backed by them. To understand this, let's take an example. We have studied that PhonePe is backed by Walmart. Now, Walmart can give you discounted coupons on any transaction which you do on PhonePe. And those discounted coupons which will be for the product which is being sold by the Walmart itself. Thus, indirectly, it is influencing your consumer choices and can ultimately lead to market distortion or monopolization. Thus, to regulate these fintech apps has become a major concern for our country, and we are going to provide certain steps which can be taken. The first and foremost is the promotion of local fintech players. Why? Because first of all, they have better understanding of the local demands, and at the same time they can also utilize the digital public infrastructure which is present in the rural areas. Also, the viability of these fintech apps shall be checked through the RBI's fintech regulatory sandbox. Also, the decentralized finance or DeFi shall be brought under a comprehensive regulatory framework. Also, we need to support this fintech penetration further to increase the financial inclusion. How we can achieve that? We can achieve that by promoting Jan Dhan Yojana or the JAM Trinity, which includes your Jan Dhan Yojana, your Aadhaar or biometric based transactions, as well as your monetary records which take place through your mobile. Also, we can promote such penetration by providing various kind of incentives to these fintech apps through the form of tax concessions. At the same time, we need to improve our cyber security infrastructure, for which we need to strictly implement the provisions of Digital Data Protection Act of 2023. At the same time, to further curb the issue of digital illiteracy, we need to increase digital literacy through various mechanisms which government has designed, such as NDLM, that is National Digital Literacy Mission, or by promotion through Disha, which is Digital Saksharta Abhiyan. So by taking all these steps, we can effectively regulate fintech apps. We need to promote their further penetration into the rural area, and at the same time there is a requirement to increase the digital literacy of the masses among India. With this suggestion, we move forward to our next news. Now, the crop rubber has been in the news because the government of India has recently raised the funding for the development of natural rubber sector for 2 years, from 2024 to 26. Now, this forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the theme of major crops and cropping patterns in the various parts of the country. So, let's first inquire that what is the status of the production of natural rubber in our country. Well, the natural rubber is the polymer of isoprene which is derived from the latex or milky sap of rubber tree. At the same time, the climate which is best suited for the cultivation of rubber crop is the tropical climate, which has an average temperature of 24 to 35 degrees Celsius, as well as it has annual rainfall of more than 100 days, which ultimately comprises the total rainfall of 2000 to 4500 millimeters. At the same time, the soil which is best suited for the cultivation of rubber is laterite soil, but at the same time in our country, the rubber is also grown in the region of sedimentary as well as alluvial soil. Now, India is the 5th largest producer of rubber in the world, after countries such as Thailand, which is the largest producer, followed by Indonesia, Vietnam, and ultimately China. Now, this whole region which comprises of rubber cultivation in our country stand at 8.5 lakh hectares. But even though if we are the 5th largest producer of the rubber crop, we are also the 2nd largest consumer of rubber crop in the world. Thus, we rely on 40% import of rubber. Now, there are several states where the crop rubber is grown in our country. The largest production comes from the state of Kerala, which comprises of more than 75% of the total production. Then it is followed by the state of Tamil Nadu, then Tripura, then Assam, and finally the state of Karnataka. So these are major producers of rubber crop in our country. But as we have studied that India is the second largest consumer, and thus we have huge import dependence for the need of rubber in our country. Now keep this in mind that rubber is very important and is used for various industries. For example, in making of your tires, in making of your shoes, or even in industries, for example, making of your conveyor belt. For all these purposes, you need rubber. Even in the field of medicine or in the field of health, the syringe which we use or the gloves which we use, it is created by rubber. Thus, our government has taken various steps to increase the production of rubber crop in our country. For example, it has increased in the allocation of the development of natural rubber sector by 23% to 708 crores. Also, the rate of assistance which is provided to the farmers who grow the rubber crop has been increased to 40,000 per hectare from the earlier 20,000. Now, the rationale behind this increasing the rate of assistance is that it will cover the production cost which has gone up, and at the same time it will also provide the incentive to farmers to further grow natural rubber. At the same time, to increase the area under rubber cultivation, the government has decided to bring non-traditional areas such as Andhra Pradesh and Odisha under the rubber cultivation. Also, to promote the research in development of natural rubber sector which can suit to various climatic conditions, the government has allocated 29 crore between 2024 to 2026 period. Thus, the government is providing a lot of impetus to increase the production of natural rubber in our country and reduce our import dependency under the larger theme of Atmanirbhar Bharat. With this, we move forward to the next news of the day. Now, an artificial intelligence tool or AlPHAFOLD, which has been developed by the DeepMind, which is a subsidiary of Google, is in the news to create a protein data bank which can be utilized to treat various kind of diseases and also develop vaccines. This forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the theme of biotechnology as well as artificial intelligence, and is also very important from the perspective of your upcoming prelims examination. So let's see what is AlPHAFOLD. AlPHAFOLD is an artificial intelligence based system which has been developed by using neural networks or deploying the technique of machine learning through various data inputs. Now, AlPHAFOLD can predict the 3D structure of protein from the sequencing of amino acids. As we can see that currently there are over 200 million known proteins which exist. At the same time, each protein has a unique shape that determines how it works and what it does. Also, predicting the structure of such unknown proteins can help us to tackle diseases and discover new medicines. Thus, AlPhaFold has been able to predict structure of entire 200 million unique protein sequences, and it has deposited this data in the Universal Protein Resource database. Thus, AlPhaFold has been able to achieve through the means of artificial intelligence, which was taking various scientists and doctors the years of hard work. Let's see what are other applications of AlPhaFold. Well, first and foremost, it has been able to solve the protein folding problem. Now, protein, which is basically a polypeptide chain of amino acids, as you can see in the diagram, it starts folding into alpha helix and beta sheet and ultimately converts into this three-dimensional structure. Now, understanding of this three-dimensional structure of protein is very important to understand the biological functions of a particular being. Now, before AlPhaFold, this study of protein structure was being conducted through the use of X-ray or nuclear magnetic resonance, which was taking a lot of time. For example, in the last 60 years, only 1,60,000 protein structures were studied. But as we have already seen that with AlPhaFold, almost entire 214 million protein sequences has been studied and predicted the structure of these protein. Also, it can lead to precision-based healthcare, where you can develop the understanding of the kind of disease which is being faced by the person. At the same time, you can also be aware about the clinical history of a particular patient. You can also go to an extent to devise that which kind of medicine will be suitable for a particular patient. All this can be done through these artificial intelligence tools such as AlPhaFold, leading to precision-based healthcare. At the same time, it can lead to the development of vaccines. For example, if we had AlPhaFold earlier, we could have studied the structure of spike protein, which was responsible for COVID-19, and it could have led to development of vaccine in much shorter span of time. Also, it will help in creating a universal database where, for example, there is existence of a protein data bank which is being created. Thus, information about various kind of disease which is impacting the people across the world can be stored at one place, which can ultimately provide for machine learning through various data-based inputs and ultimately leading to development of various other such artificial intelligence tools which we can use for the development of precision-based agriculture. Thus, remember that AlPhaFold is basically an artificial intelligence system which has been deployed to study the protein structure, and such protein structures are unique in every other species. With this knowledge and discussion, we move forward to the last news of the day. The BOSE-EINSTEIN condensate has been in the news because the year 2024 marks the centenary or completion of 100 years of Bose-Einstein condensate theory, which revolutionized the study of quantum physics. Now, this forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the theme of Achievement of Indians in the field of science and technology, and also holds paramount importance from the perspective of your prelims examination. Now, Satyendranath Bose, along with scientist Meghnath Saha, laid down the foundation of molecular physics in our country. Now keep this in mind that Bose-Einstein condensate, which developed in the 1920s, this period of 1920s was a revolutionary period in the field of science and technology. Albert Einstein had just changed the understanding of space and time with his theory of general relativity. Also, the theories of Max Planck and scientists such as Niels Bohr was revolutionizing the field of science and telling us that there is existence of a microscopic world which we need to discover about. It was in this backdrop that the Satyendranath Bose, he was a lecturer during that time period in Dhaka University, where he was finding a bit of difficulty to teach his student theory of Planck's black body radiation. What does Planck's black body radiation theory says? It states that all objects, whether a bowl of soup or a star such as sun, emits radiation in range of frequencies. Now such bodies are called as black body because they emit light and do not reflect it like other objects. This electromagnetic radiation which is being emitted from any object or from a heated body is not emitted as a continuous flow, which was held by the classical physicists. So classical physicists said that any object which is emitting the energy, it is continuously emitting that energy, but Planck contradicted this theory and said that instead of such continuous flow, there are quanta of energy which is being released by the body. This quanta is nothing but a small amount of vibration which is being taken place by the object. Now to calculate this energy which is being emitted by any object, the Planck gave the theory of black body radiation, where he gave the formula of H into V, where H stands for 6.626 into 10 to the power minus 34 joules per second. This is basically the minimum energy which is released by any object when it is vibrating, or the minimum frequency which is being observed by an object. At the same time, V is nothing but the frequency of photon. Now Satyendranath Bose, as he was finding it difficult for his pupils, his students, to make them understand that what does this frequency of photon stands for, he treated this radiation as a photon gas and used some new statistical techniques to count the state of this photon. Correct? So as you can see in the image, there are various kind of frequencies which can be observed by an object, and when you multiply it with the Planck's constant, you get the derivation for the required energy which is being emitted by the object. Thus, with this theory of Satyendranath Bose, he tried to publish it in various science journals, but all of them rejected the theory of Satyendranath Bose. Ultimately, Satyendranath Bose sent this paper or his research to his favorite German scientist Albert Einstein, who realized the potential of his theory and further extended the theory by propounding that there do exist an ideal gas which he named as Bose gas, and this formed the basis of Bose-Einstein condensate, which we are going to read now. Now Bose-Einstein condensate stands for the fifth state of matter beside the known to us all solid, liquid, gas and plasma. Einstein said that such ideal gas or Bose gas basically forms the fifth state of matter, where if the atoms of a specific elements, first shown in the element rubidium, is cooled to a very low temperature up to 0 degree Kelvin or minus 273.15 degrees Celsius, at such low temperature, these atoms will stop behaving like individual particles with different state of energy, and they will start coalescing into taking shape into one object. Rather, they will condense into the lowest state of quantum state and start behaving as one giant wave. Let's try to understand this with an example. Let's say that I am person A and there is a person B sitting right next to me. Now there is a limitation to how close I can get to this person B. And no matter however close I get to this person B, I will never be able to merge into this person. The reason being that the electrons, protons and neutrons of this person will repel the electrons and protons of mine. These are called as fermions. These electrons and protons, they are called as fermions, where there is always a space, and this space cannot be coalesced no matter what we do. But there do exist subparticles or subatomic particles which can be stacked over each other to any small infinite volume which we can think of. And this was the idea which was coming from the Bose theory, where he stated that he took the radiation as a gas. So basically these atoms, these elements have lost their solid characteristics and have started behaving like a gas, where they behave as one giant wave. Thus, the theory of Satyendranath Bose and further extended by Albert Einstein ultimately led to the formation of the larger study of quantum technology, which we often hear about in nowadays. The reason being that it has a lot of scientific applications. For example, the principle of superimposition, which we use in the quantum computers, right? Where instead of binary mechanisms of earlier computers, now there can be a superimposition, which ultimately lead to much faster calculations. Also, the quantum computing, and we can also achieve superconductivity in wires, and where there will be no resistance to the flow of electricity. So all these future technologies are ultimately based upon the theory which was given by Satyendranath Bose. Also, we can develop a very strong security system by using quantum entanglement. What is quantum entanglement? It is basically, let's say there are two qubits A and B. Now these two qubits are such interrelated to each other that if we will make any change in qubit A or in qubit B by any third party, then such change will be reflected in the original location of A or on the original location of B. Thus, let's say if we are texting to person B and this chat is encrypted through quantum entanglement. So if any third person will try to interfere and break this line of communication, then both the person will be informed at the same time. Thus, we can create a strong security system for our future. At the same time, it can also lead to precision measurement and development of sensor technologies, where we can sense emergence of any gravitational waves. We can also advance our magnetic resonance imaging system. At the same time, we can lead to very fast calculation of weather changes, climate changes, etc. Thus, the field of quantum technology, which is based upon the theories of Albert Einstein and Satyendranath Bose, has immense potential for development of technology which is required for the future. Now keep this in mind that for his innovations, even though various other scientists who actually derived from the discovery of Satyendranath Bose, they ultimately got Nobel Prize, but no such award was given to Satyendranath Bose. However, in the year of 1954, he was awarded with Padma Vibhushan. Thus, we have seen the importance of Bose-Einstein condensate theory, and we have also seen its various applications. Thus, we have reached to the end of our discussion today. Do not forget to attempt the questions at the end of the video and test your knowledge. We will meet with a very interesting session very soon. All the best. Thank you.